Well, Austria has been and gone with a race that was slightly less entertaining than Silverstone, it has to be said, but still gave us plenty of talking points throughout the weekend. So let's take a look at the 5 things we learned from the Austrian Grand Prix. A double Grand Slam. Starting with Pecco Bagnaia, he has clearly put his stamp on the 2023 title. Pecco was dominant this weekend. In fact, depending on how you look at it, you could say he took a double Grand Slam this weekend as he led every lap in the sprint race, obviously won the sprint race and got the fastest lap in the sprint race, and did the same for the feature, as well as, of course, starting on pole position for both races. That does count as a Grand Slam each in my books, meaning he took 2 this weekend and, of course, maximum points. We are obviously only about halfway through the season, but it has to be said at this point, with Jorge Martin not doing so well in the last couple of races. Same for Bezzecchi. Despite his podium in the feature this weekend, it looks like Bagnaia will go on relatively unchallenged for the rest of this year. Finally, a finish. Repsol Honda and Honda in general over the past, half year, even longer I guess, haven't had much to smile about, but after 301 days, they have finally gotten Marc Marquez across the line in a feature race. It was almost a year, which is crazy to think about, but Marc Marquez did manage to finish a feature race this weekend, which is good to see. These are the kind of things that Honda need to be doing. You know, they're struggling, but they need to finish races so that they can get the data, get the information they need to hopefully improve their bike for next year. And so it was good to see Marc Marquez not being too aggressive and actually finishing a race, and hopefully that will help Honda start to move forward towards the front where they should be once again. Fast starts. Starts are, of course, very critical in MotoGP, and for the past half of the season, or since Jerez in particular, we've seen that KTM have really ruled the roost on the start front, as they've often jumped right to the front few positions in each race. But after Silverstone, we thought that Aprilia might have improved in that kind of area, and this weekend we saw that Pecco Bagnaia and Ducati, don't know if it was just Bagnaia getting a really good launch or if Ducati's found something, but either way, they got some really good starts, and that was in part what led to Pecco winning both races this weekend. But one person who wasn't starting well, once again, was Maverick Vinales. We've said it a million times. I think it's probably one of the oldest complaints in the book at this point. Maverick Vinales, once again, didn't get a good start. You could say it led to that first crash on the sprint race to some degree, as he kind of became a roadblock for a lot of other riders. And the same thing happened in the feature race, and I think I have a right to be angry about this because I put him into my fantasy team. I put faith in him once again, and once again he lets us down. He needs to get better starts. I don't know what Aprilia need to do, don't know what he needs to do, but it's just sad to see because he had so much pace this weekend. Reverse gear. KTM this weekend had both a very positive weekend and a bit of a rubbish weekend, depending on which side of the garage you look at. It was, of course, their home race weekend. And on Brad's side, he celebrated a 2-year extension of his contract with a couple of second places, and obviously both the sprint and the feature. He tried to push Bagnaia in both races, but didn't quite manage it. And on the other side of the garage, Jack Miller really struggled. He qualified really well after a difficult few practice sessions, and you're kind of thinking, yeah, maybe he can do something here. But he did something that's become all too common for him, where he just dropped back through the field. And it seems he's running out of tyre grip quite early in the races. And this weekend, even more so than Silverstone, a couple of previous weekends, show those struggles because, you know, he started 4th on the grid and ended up finishing 15th with just 1 point, which is frankly dismal. So KTM needs to find something on the tyre wear front for both of their riders if they want to get closer to Ducati and start competing for those wins. Riding angry. I think we have to discuss the incident that happened on the first lap of the sprint with Jorge Martin and that gaggle of riders that got taken out in the first corner. Overall, I think that the stewarding on those incidents was actually pretty good this weekend. Jorge Martin, of course, got caught up in 2 incidents in the sprint race. And I do think he was riding a bit angry after a, let's be honest, pretty terrible qualifying. And I think that overall, the penalty that he received, the long lap penalty for the feature race for that first corner incident, was fair enough. I saw some people saying that it perhaps wasn't harsh enough, but I think it's important to consider the fact that it is the first lap. Bold moves are made in the first lap, and particularly on the first corner. It was never going to be on his position on the racetrack. He wasn't going to make it around that corner without running wide if no one else had been there. So I think at the end of the day, it was a fair enough penalty for that one. The incident with Marini is a difficult one. I think if he'd managed it, and we know that it is possible to manage a overtake into turn 2A, we saw it last year with Fabio Quartararo. If he'd done it, he would have been a hero. It would have been, wow, what an amazing overtake. And he didn't, obviously, and Marini was the one who ended up losing out. A long lap penalty would probably have been a little bit too severe in my books. Marini could have stood it up. And so I think that, no penalty there was fair enough. And I think Simon Crafar echoed those same thoughts during the sprint race. But I do think it's interesting to see how being angry can affect a rider. The way that he was taking those risks after Silverstone, which wasn't such a good round for him in many ways, and after a terrible qualifying, you can see how riding angry really affects these riders and makes them do things that they probably shouldn't or wouldn't do under normal circumstances. And hopefully Jorge Martin will stay calm in the next few rounds. There's still plenty of time left in the title, and hopefully just ride race by race, because he's more than capable of taking quite a few more wins this season if he keeps up the form that we know he's capable of. Rider of the weekend. So my rider of the weekend is rather easy. There wasn't a major rider who I saw that progressed up the field, so I'm going to have to give it to Bagnaia. He was so dominant. Of course, he could have been more dominant. He could have taken top spot in all the practice sessions, but he tends not to do that. He was just absolutely dominant, qualifying, races, all the rest. So he's my rider of the weekend. I don't like to give it to the winner, but, respect to him because he did an incredible job this weekend. Struggle of the weekend. Struggle of the weekend, we've already talked about him. It's really easy. Jack Miller, that was just really disappointing, particularly considering the fact that his teammate did manage second place. For him to fall back to 15th, get 1 point, is very disappointing, and he clearly struggled for most of the weekend in everything aside from qualifying, really. So he is my struggle of the weekend. Right, okay, that is 5 things that we learned from the Austrian Grand Prix. Some of you may have noticed that I didn't do a preview to this race weekend. I'm going to have a play around with what videos I'm making each week, see how that affects viewership, because it does take quite a few hours to actually edit and do all these things for the videos. So this one tends to get viewed quite well. The preview not so much, so I might see if I stop that or simplify it somehow. We'll see what I do, but I'm going to be playing around with that over the next little while. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, like, comment, subscribe, tell me other things that you picked up on from this race weekend in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next race weekend. Goodbye.